All right, what we're going to look in this lesson is how Mendel's law of independent assortment will allow genes that are located on separate chromosomes to be inherited or passed on, what we say, independently from each other. What does that mean? It means the inheritance of one gene does not affect the other. Okay, so when doing independent assortment problems, we'll always have at least two, sometimes more genes. The example that we'll be using in this lesson is two of Mendel's pea plants traits. We had flower colors where purple flowers were dominant over white flowers, and the other one was pod color, where green was dominant over yellow. And so these two genes are located on separate chromosomes, as we can see up here. They're separated. So what happens is when we go to form gametes during the process of meiosis, if you remember at the beginning of meiosis, homologous chromosomes pair up and they move as a unit during the early stages of meiosis one. And so when they line up along metaphase, okay, they line up and then separate in anaphase as homologous pairs. So what will that mean? The midpoint of our cell, kind of down here, what would be the metaphase plate, we go to separate, and what will happen is that the chromosomes located on each side of each pair, so one of each pair goes to each side. So when we're looking here at the gametes that are formed, on the left side, the gamete that would form from this side will have a dominant, big F and a big G. Whereas the gamete that forms on the right side would have a little f and a little g. Okay? And so what independent assortment is saying, that's only one possibility. Just because this time big F went to the same side as big G doesn't mean that next time it will. There's an equal likelihood that will change. So what we're going to do here is look at the other example. Erased a little too much. Okay, and so once we get these erased, if you remember, we had like with like at that time. So what we're going to do is let's just say that this next time the chromosome carrying the G lined up in a different pattern. Okay, and so this is how it lined up. We would go into the metaphase stage. This is how they line up. They would separate in anaphase 1. And what do we got this time? This time the big F is with the little g. If you remember last time it was with the big G. So what is this saying? What it's saying is that what you inherit for one gene does not affect what you inherit for the other. So notice there was an equal likelihood that the big F would end up with the big G or the little g. So that is in essence how independent assortment works. This is something Mendel didn't know about meiosis, but we do understand it today because of meiosis. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and solve problems. What you'll have to do is be able to calculate the probabilities that the offspring will inherit certain genotypes or phenotypes from a particular parent. Okay, so we're going to, in this example, assume that both parents are heterozygous for both genes. And so one way we could do this, you remember from just using a single gene, is we could do a Punnett square. Well, the Punnett square for a independent assortment problem gets a bit more complicated. If you have two genes, you're going to end up having a 4x4. I've got one started down here so you can see what that looks like. It's going to be a 4x4 Punnett square. Why is that? Well, it's because there's going to be four possible allele combinations in the gametes. Okay, and so how does that work? How are we going to fill this out? So if the parent is big F, big G, little g, okay, we need to put that parent on one edge and on the other edge of the Punnett square. Here's what a lot of students do that is absolutely wrong. You cannot just take these four letters, big F, big G, little g, and write them like this. This does not work. This is wrong. Do not do that ever. Okay, that's wrong. What do we need to do? We can't have one F in the gamete and no Gs. We have to have one F and one G. We need to have one of each gene. Remember, how did we form a gamete? We took one F and one G. Okay, so we need an F and a G on the top of each column, so right down here, and we need the F and a G on the side. So how do we form that? So again, remember, the big F, we'll kind of do up here, the big F can go with either a big G or the big F can go with a little g. So those are two possibilities, and they have an equal likelihood of occurring. So what would I do? I'm going to put big F, big G here. Then I'm going to have big F, little g here. What are the other two possibilities? Remember, we have the little f allele, which has an equal likelihood of being the f allele as the big F allele. So there's 50-50. So if there's two alleles that have a big F, there are going to be two alleles, 3 and 4 will be the little f. So that worked. The little f can be paired with either the big G or the little g. Okay, and so those are the possibilities for that parent. And in this case, if we assume both parents are heterozygous for these two genes, then the other parent would be the same. So we'll just write those here down the side. And now it's time to fill out the Punnett square. How do we fill out the Punnett square? Remember, each square is the allele combination, the genotype, for the zygote if that egg cell is fertilized by that sperm cell. So if we go like here and here, if this the egg cell here on the left was fertilized by the sperm cell up in the top of the first column, what would you get? Here's how we'd write it. We're going to write it similar to how we wrote this up here, where we write the two F's together and the two G's together with the dominant allele first, if there's a dominant allele. So this is how we'd write it. Big F, big G, big G. So this zygote would be homozygous dominant for both genes, okay? And so we could see some different possibilities. If we were doing this one, what would we have down here? Big F and a little f, and a big G and a little g. Heterozygous for both. We'll see that there are some homozygous scenarios. So if we're doing this one and this one, the Fs are heterozygous. There's a big F and a little f. But notice for the G gene, there are two recessive. So we've got heterozygous for the F gene and homozygous recessive for the G gene. So that's how we basically fill out the Punnett square. You'll notice there's 16 possibilities. So when we're doing probabilities, basically everything is going to be out of 16. So you need to fill this out completely, figure out how many of whatever you're being asked for. If you're asked for, like, how many of the offspring will be purple flowered and green pods? How many of them will be white flowers and green pods? How many of them will be heterozygous, big for both traits, big F, little f, big G, little g? You need to go and count up how many of the 16 boxes meet whatever requirement. And so I did fill one out earlier, filled that out completely so you can see that. Okay, and so this is the filled out Punnett square. And if you take a look, let's highlight here what I'm showing right here. If you take a look, is the phenotype that I wrote in red. Okay, and so the P for purple, the G for green, the yellow, the Y for yellow, and the W for white. So what does this top left box mean? What does big F, big G, big G? It means that we know two things. We know that this plant will have both purple flowers and green pods. So when we're doing the phenotype, we're going to look at both phenotypes. We can come down to here. We'll see a different one. This one is purple flowers with yellow pods. Down here you see a white flower with green pods, and down here you see a white flower with yellow pods. In fact, if you count them up, if you count how many are purple and green, what you're going to see is that there are 9. Nope, that was a little funky. There are 9, so we can kind of do this here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that are purple and green. So when doing a phenotypic ratio, we would do the two dominant traits first. So these are those that are purple and green. Okay, what would come next? Well, we would do the purple and yellow. So how many are purple or dominant for the first gene and recessive for the second gene? And so if we see here's one, here's the second, here's a third. So there's three of those. Okay, and so then what would we do? We would do how many have white flowers and green pods. So they're recessive for the first trait, and they are dominant for the second trait. And you can see here's one, two, and three of those. And how many are recessive for both traits? Well, there's just this one here. Okay, and so you get 9 to 3 to 3 to 1. Add up those numbers. They should add up to 16. They do. 9 plus 3, 12, plus 3, 15, plus 1, 16. And that is the phenotypic ratio of this cross. And will always be the phenotypic ratio of both parents are heterozygous for both traits. Okay, and so when doing these problems, you can do this Punnett square, but what you're really going to need to do if we start getting into more complex problems is you're not going to be able to always take the time to do the Punnett square. There is another way to do this, and that's taking advantage of the laws of probability. Okay, and so how are we going to do that? We don't need to do the Punnett square to solve the problem. So suppose my question is, what's the probability of the offspring of this same cross that we did earlier being heterozygous for both traits? Okay, so how do I do that? Well, we can take a advantage of the laws of probability and the fact that these are independent events. What do I mean by that? The inheritance of the F gene does not impact the inheritance of the G gene. So I can just determine the probability of the offspring being heterozygous for the F gene. So I can just do big F little f crossed with big F little f, do the simple Punnett square. You might not need to even do the Punnett square if you have these particular ratios all kind of memorized. Okay, so here we go. Finish filling that out. So what's the probability that the offspring will be heterozygous for the F trait? Well, it's 1/2. You can see there's one here and there's one here. Okay, and so again, the inheritance of the F gene does not impact the inheritance of the G gene. So we can also look at the G gene separately. We end up with the same thing. We can do the Punnett square pretty simply. See that we get the same pattern. And again, how many of these are heterozygous? 2 out of 4 or 1/2. So what's the probability of the offspring being heterozygous for both traits? Well, because the two appends are independent, I need the F gene to be heterozygous and I need the G gene to be heterozygous. Whenever you say that word and, you multiply the two probabilities. So we take 1/2 times 1/2. Okay, and yes, so this does mean you'll have to know how to memorize or remember how to multiply fractions. And the way you do that, if you remember, you multiply the numerators together. So in this case, 1 times 1 is still 1, and then you multiply the denominators together. So it's 4 1/4. There's your answer. Probability of the offspring being heterozygous for both traits is 1 out of 4. Remember, that would be the same, that is the equivalent of being 4 out of 16. So does that work with the Punnett square? The answer is yes. Let's go back up to the Punnett square. Let's get the green. And let's circle all the genotypes that are heterozygous. There's one, there's another, there's another, there's another. And if you pause it and look carefully, you'll see there are no others. So if I had done this whole Punnett square, I would have counted that there were 4 that are heterozygous for both traits. That would be out of 16, which could be reduced to 1/4. And you'll notice that that was a lot more work to get the same answer that just going 1/2 times 1/2. Okay, so if you have to do 3 genes, in AP biology, you often have to do 3 genes. They might even throw add what's the probability that it would be a boy or a girl to that, where you have to again take that times 1/2. So hopefully this will help you solve the problems. If not, go ahead and ask me any questions, and we'll see you. Bye.